Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, word association number 9. Today, Andrew's going to feed me some words. Are they all from you, or did some of these get contributed?
No, they're all from me.
They're okay, all from Andrew.
And people don't send me words.
People need to send him words. Well, let me tell you what you're sending words for first, in case you're new to the show. Here's what happens. We believe martial arts relates to all aspects of life. So Andrew kind of tests that theory and says, hey, I'm going to give Jeremy some words. And Jeremy has to relate them back to martial arts. Now, some are easier than others. Some of you take some joy in the stumbling that I do as I struggle to connect two dots into a line. But if nothing else, it'll likely get your wheels turning. Now, if you do want to contribute for number 10 or beyond, you can email andrew@whistlekick.com and give him a word or two. And if you haven't, you might want to go check out some of the past ones we've done. These are a lot of fun. If you like what we do, please consider supporting us. There are a whole number of ways. We've got the Whistlekick Alliance now for school owners. If you're like, what is that, Jeremy? You really need to check it out because it is it's awesome. Okay. And on the individual side, we've got the Patreon. And of course, you could buy stuff at the store, whistlekick.com, podcast 15. I think that's a good intro. I'm ready.
All right. So I have a post-it note here with words on it. I got to do it quickly because otherwise you'll see the words. But I got.
I'm going to press pause.
And so, I just randomly walked around and thought and would see things and would write words down. I'm like, I wonder how he would relate that to martial arts. So the first one, cough drops.
My general approach to these is I look at the utility. What is the utility of a cough drop, and does that utility exist in the martial arts world? A cough drop is when something's off, right? Maybe you get one of the tastier ones and you treat them like candy, but I'm going to choose to treat it like a cough drop, right? So what's a cough drop do? A cough drop is for when something is not right and you don't want it to be that way. It's masking symptoms. It's a figurative Band-Aid in this case, right? Something's not right and you take something supplemental, something exogenous to make it better. We don't have a lot of that in martial arts, right? Because what you show up with is what you are. And this idea that, I could alter my martial arts temporarily in a beneficial way, that really doesn't exist. You could lie, your instructor could say, you've done a great job today, even if you haven't. But there's really no way. There's no Band-Aid. There's no cough drop for when your training, your skill is off. If it's deteriorated because you've not been training, there's only one solution. You train. If you want to get better at a certain aspect of anything, you got to work on it. I don't know that I've ever thought of this in this way. And this is one of the things I love about these episodes, is because it forces me to think in a completely different way. And I think I've got to leave it there. Yeah.
All right. Next word, dog tags.
So if we're going the official military dog tags, right? What's the purpose? The purpose is, as I understand it, not as someone who has served, but it's an identification tool, and it's most important for when that person is no longer with us. That if they are killed on the field of battle. What I find interesting about dog tags is that they, I've seen some folks who have served continue to wear their dog tags. And I don't pretend to fully understand the reasons why, but I think for some of them, it's carrying around a memory of a part of who they are, who they were. And we do that, a lot of us, as martial artists, whether it's ways that we're not so fond of, and I think I'm speaking for you because we've spent enough time together, like asking people outside of your training to refer to you by your title.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or maybe it's someone who wears their gi pants to school. Did that a few times. They didn't have pockets, it didn't last. Or maybe it's just someone who carries around some symbols. Whether it's, I keep my bow in the car, or, you look at that bruise on your arm. The world of training is as different from the world of non-training as the military is from the world of non-military. They are not the same. I'm not saying military and martial arts are the same, not at all. But they are dramatically different environments. And when you spend enough time in those environments, if it's an environment that resonates for you, it can be difficult to step back out of it. And it can be, you can understand why someone would want to hold on to some symbols of what that environment was like for them.
Okay, calendar. I'm thinking like a wall calendar, like you'd hang on the
Mm.
wall.
I don't use wall calendar. I've never used wall calendars, but I know people who do. I know people who save them and they reflect on them and they will line them up like side by side and like compare notes of like how the years went. And I think that's fascinating. But a wall calendar really, for most of us, I think is an excuse to display photos these days, right? Most people are not using, maybe I'm wrong, but most people that I see when they're displaying calendars, they're doing it because the photos in the calendar, the subject of the calendar is what's of interest. Like I know that one of your bands you're in is fundraising with calendars.
Hmm.
And yeah, I bought one, we're committed to buy one. And it's not about the dates. It's about, I want to see these pictures and see my friend on the wall. And I'm probably never going to write on it.
Hmm. I would challenge one thing you said. I
Okay.
know, and our family is this way, and I know a lot of people that put a calendar up on the wall and use it, write things on the calendar.
Maybe it's more common in households with multiple people, right? And so like I fully acknowledge that maybe I'm a little detached from this.
Yeah.
But at the end, at the end, the heart of it, what's a calendar? It's a scheduling tool. It is a planning tool. And so I'm going to relate this to martial arts with the inverse. Most martial arts schools do a terrible job of planning, of tracking, of coordinating. And I think that in doing so, in focusing so much on the curriculum being input and not enough on the results of the output of that input, that it does students a disservice. That if you were to, let's say you were constant using a wall calendar, you were constantly late on Thursdays to your meeting at the PTA, a PTO, parent teacher, whatever organization. You're always late. At some point, you're going to look at that calendar, literally or in your head, and say, how do I buffer this? Is there something that comes before that I need to change, that I need to quit? Do I need to take a different route? What do I have to do? Right. And I don't see that happen in a lot of martial arts schools. I will visit schools and I will say, hey, wow, it's clear they spend a lot of time on this, but not a lot of time on this. And it's everyone from the top down. Now, it's one thing if that school says, this isn't important to us. But I've had people come to me and say, we're just not very good at XYZ. I don't think there's a good excuse for that.
Mhm.
You have the tools, you just need to put in the time training. Utilize those tools, look at the ins and outs, look at the cause and effect. It's something that I'm doing in my school, and it's been awesome. We had an evaluation, which is pre-testing for us. And my students were not very good at blocking. and my students were not where I needed them to be for testing with the first form. To folks out there, I just started a school a few months ago. So that sent me back to the drawing board and say, okay, what do I need to do differently? Oh, I don't like teaching blocking. That's on me. So we're making just a little bit of an adjustment in blocking when we train.
Sure.
And the first kata, the first form, I again, slight adjustment in the frequency. And because I plan everything out, there will probably be a program, maybe it's a MATIC course, I don't know, that comes out of this. Because I plan everything out, I can make that adjustment in my algorithm, and I can watch over the next few months how it changes.
Cool. Next word, toothpaste.
Did I blow time on that?
No, you don't have a time.
Didn't I used to?
No, you're thinking of rapid fire.
Oh,
trivia. Or not trivia, but questions. Okay, toothpaste.
Okay. Toothpaste is the heavy bag training of martial arts. It is used improperly, and it is not nearly as effective as everyone thinks it is.
Okay.
I am not a doctor. Don't listen to anything I'm about to say. If you brush with toothpaste and then you rinse your mouth out, it does nothing. If you practice on the heavy bag and all you ever do is power shots because it makes you feel good and you like to see the bag swing and you like that tactile feedback of things going smash against your hand or your foot or your knee or whatever, how is that helping you in your training, in your sparring? Could it be a lot more beneficial? Here's a great example. What happens when you do rounds on a heavy bag? How often are you throwing those power shots? Almost never. Why? Because it's really difficult to throw them and recover. How often are you going to throw them in a competitive environment or a confrontational environment? Almost never. We have to think about how the tool is used.
All right. Ceiling fan.
I was just... Do you have like a camera into my house? Have you hacked my cameras or something? So, I'll explain why I say that. So I have a wood stove, and during the day, if I'm home, I'm working from home, I usually run the wood stove as the primary source of heat. I used to have a pedestal fan behind it that would rotate and distribute the warmer air. It's been rotating. The fan part hasn't been running in I don't know how long. Because I went over to it and I was like, what is going on? I have no idea how long it's been broken. Could have been broken for years. Seriously. Okay, well, what do I do? Well, I generally run the ceiling fan that's in that room at a speed of 1. It goes up to 3. What happens if I turn it up to 3? Oh, now all of a sudden the whole house is warmer. A ceiling fan is a very efficient way of creating entropy, distributing the air. Martial arts schools have an entropy as well. What is entropy? It's trying to find the balance, right? If you don't teach any of your students, let's take sparring, for example, and all of your students continue to spar, you have whatever protocols for sparring with them, and you don't train them, you don't give them drills. Let's just say we locked them in a room for years with food and water, and all they had to do was spar. They would reach a certain point. All of them would reach a certain point. They probably wouldn't progress beyond that, right? There's an entropy that finds that balance in there. You've probably seen, and Andrew, I bet you've seen this, new students, if we were to graph their skill, let's say sparring, or with anything, right? It starts off really bad. They make some very quick progress. And then it's not flat, but a shallower lineup. right?
Sure.
We in most schools we can say that because usually what they suck because they've got nothing, they have no experience, and they've got some fear. We get them past that, and then they're like, oh, this is how hands work, right?
Yep.
And so they pick up some competency pretty quickly. The ceiling fan assists in that distribution. We have the ability to assist with that distribution in our classes. And we do a lot of this organically. We tend to take our more competent students and pair them up with our more novice students. Because theoretically, that more competent student has more time around. They can do a better job training them, and that person, it's distributing that knowledge. But if we go back to the calendar one, there are lots of things that we could do better. It's not just, hey, high rank student, novice student, because that's a one way. That's a one directional flow of information. But if you have two more novice students, and in a culture they're given the ability to acknowledge and support each other, hey, I just got corrected on this thing, I think you're doing it too. Because it's a lot easier for someone who's been training for 6 months to relate to someone who's been training for 8 or 9 months than it is someone who's been training for 30 years to relate to someone who's been training for 6 months.
Coffee mug.
If you've got stuff to tack on, by all means, man.
No. It's all good.
Coffee mug. It's what holds the coffee. Coffee mugs are fun, right? Like, it's an example of individualization that we don't often encourage in a lot of martial arts schools. Oh, nice. Andrew's showing, is that it doesn't look like a 20. Is that a 12?
Yeah, 12-sided die.
Okay. See, nerd cred. I was like, that's not a 10. That's not a 20. And for those of you listening, Andrew was holding up a coffee mug of a 12-sided die from like a Dungeons and Dragons sort of environment. Okay. Nobody needs a fancy coffee mug, right? Like, that mug is cool. You don't need that. Its function is exactly the same as the most boring mug you could find probably at Walmart for $3.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that mug is probably more cumbersome to use and clean than the $3 coffee mug.
Very true.
But it's one of the ways, and for a lot of us, the first way in our day that we create some individualization, that we tell the world, we remind ourselves, these are things that are important to me. A lot of people, I'm drinking out of this yellow Yeti 30 ouncer because I filled my coffee this morning, and I don't like coffee getting cold. But a lot of people put stickers on these. If you watch First Cup on Friday mornings, you see I drink out of a First Cup mug. And a lot of people have purchased First Cup mugs. People purchase martial arts radio mugs and whistlekick mugs. Because it's hey, this is something that's important to me. Now, where does that show up in training? At some schools, it can show up in forms, but at plenty of schools, it can't. Lots of schools, your form is expected to be exactly the same as somebody else's form. So it tends to show up in some manner of free-form movement, which could be self-defense. It could be, and most often is, sparring. If you watch the way someone spars, it will tell you what is most important to them about their training. If it's the athletic elements of their training, you will see it come out in how they spar. If it's the precision, the repeating the same technique to make it as exact as possible, you will see that in their sparring. And I find that really interesting. You can learn a lot about a martial artist by how they spar.
Cool. Jigsaw puzzle.
Remember when we did the martial arts radio jigsaw puzzle episode?
I do. That was fun.
That's when everybody learned I'm not good at doing puzzle.
That's when everybody learned I am really good at doing puzzles.
You are really good. Yeah, the juxtaposition was rather dramatic.
Bonus points if you remember what episode we recorded while doing it.
I don't even remember. You probably do, though.
Yeah, I do.
You have
It was
no
what would
idea.
make a good martial arts movie.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, how
Um,
did you relate jigsaw
anyway,
puzzles to martial arts?
martial arts is a jigsaw puzzle, but it doesn't end, right? It's a jigsaw puzzle without edges. Ooh, I like that. I just made that up. There are no corner pieces, right? Most people, the way they do a puzzle, right? They sort the edges and the non-edges, and then they go into the edges and they find the corners. And that's a process you can get into as you become more advanced. But that's not how you start.
Mhm.
Day one, it's not, here are your four corners. What even would those be, right? It becomes, here's a piece, here's a piece. Now, if you're training at a good school, they give you a few pieces that connect. But I've trained at schools, and Andrew, you probably have, or at least seen schools where it takes a while for those pieces to connect. You get this punch and this block and this kick, and maybe you're doing this and you're doing this, and you're going, what is happening? And for some students, it's 3, 4, 5 years before those dots connect, those pieces connect. And there's a theme threading through here, and maybe it's just because this is what I'm thinking about today, but that's something that a school can do a better job at. What do you want your students to know at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years? And you reverse engineer. How do you want those pieces to connect? What is the picture that they should see? And the picture should continue to grow. And you reverse engineer, you work backwards, and you make sure that the material and the way it's trained gets them there.
All
Jigsaw
right,
puzzle.
we got two more. The next
Okay.
one, second to last one, USB. USB drive,
As
right?
in, okay, so a
Flash
USB
drive.
drive, a flash drive, a
Yeah, flash.
thumb drive.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was going to get really nerdy and go, universal serial bus.
Yeah. No, I realized when I said USB that you could go into the port that it goes into, but I was thinking of a USB drive.
Okay. The usage of those has changed dramatically. When those first came out and they didn't have a lot of storage space, the main usage people had for them, there were two uses. And one of them has pretty much gone away. Transferring files between computers. It's called SneakerNet because, and for those of you out there who don't know, I spent 20 years in IT and still spend some time in IT, but I don't support business networks or anything like that. But we called it SneakerNet because in an environment where the permissions were overly restrictive, I often have one of these on my desk. I don't. Someone would grab one of these flash drives and they'd load the files on and they would give it to someone or even walk to the other end. I did this plenty of times because download speeds might have been slow. For the most part, we had that. Remember, I started doing IT when dial up was a thing, right? Like we had people, I was thinking about this last night. I had clients that were sharing a dial up connection in a home network.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was brutal. So you wouldn't download anything more than once. You would download it and you would copy it and you would move it around. The other place people would use them, and they still somewhat do, but it tends to be on an external hard drive, which is a really, really big flash drive, backup, or kind of offloading storage if your computer is getting old. As an aside, I have to say this: your important things should never only exist in one place. If you have things that are important, you better, and you copy them to a flash drive and you think that that's a good long-term storage plan, please don't do that. That's not a good idea. Anyway, but as flash drives have become really, really cheap, right? Like, Andrew, if you lost that drive, forgetting about what might be on it, you'd be like, all right, whatever. It probably cost me $8, maybe $10.
Yeah, probably not even that at this point.
When I started buying these things, for a 64 megabyte drive, not gigabyte, megabyte drive, we were paying $50 to $100 because it was that big of a deal. We needed them. It was a tool. But you could easily distribute information. in a way that was way more convenient than the other way you had at the time, which was a blank CD or a blank DVD and recording those files. You could distribute it, you could edit it, you could update it, it could be shared, and people would take it and they would use it for what it was, and they would generally recycle the drive.
Mhm.
That's forms. Kata pumse tul hyung. People take it, they take it for what it is. Maybe they wipe some of the stuff out, they put some of the stuff in of their own, but they generally hold on to those drives. I don't know people who takes those, unless they're really old, take them and throw them away. There's still use there, and they find a way to make it their own. And that's something that I find super interesting, and I know you do too, Andrew, about forms, is how they evolve and change. And I shouldn't use the word evolve because that suggests better, how they morph and change as they move from school to school and martial arts system and style to system and style. You know, there are a number of forms that are fairly, I don't want to say universal, but say like something like Seiyuchin or Chinto. It exists in martial arts systems that don't even call it that. Or Pinyon Heian, right? That series, Taikyoko, right? Like, I just think it's really cool that those patterns of movements have been done for that long and people continue to put their own spin.
Okay. And last question, or not question, last word, handcuffs.
It's a restraint.
Mm-hmm.
It's a limitation. Very common. In fact, so common that I'm pretty sure they're all keyed roughly the same, right? The goal of handcuffs is not to keep someone trapped indefinitely, but to restrain them for transport. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of them.
Unless they're fuzzy.
And unless they're fuzzy, we're not going to go there. But it's a restraint. And we have techniques in the martial arts that are similar. You know, a half Nelson, full Nelson, you know, some kind of arm bar. But that's not where I'm going to go. Because if you give someone enough time in handcuffs, they'll get away and eventually they'll get out. It's the artificial limitations that some martial arts schools place on their students. You can't learn that yet. You're starting to figure that out, but I want you to stop doing this for now. When you learn this, when you earn this rank, when you have this much time in, when you've satisfied this prerequisite. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, it's day 2 of someone's martial arts career and, you know, they're not spending their time on step punch. They're trying to figure out jump, spinning, whatever. I'm talking about someone's been training for a while and they're starting to ask the right questions. And rather than receiving answers or even being permitted to answer their own questions through training, they're told, you can't do that yet. I'm not allowing you to do that. I don't even want you to practice that on your own. That's an artificial limitation that stifles someone's progress. Now, in the case of handcuffs, let's assume that they are being applied ethically and appropriately, right? I'm not going to. So there is a difference there, right? In theory, the instructor has their best interests in mind. And I guess you could say that about the person being handcuffed, which I would guess the 99% of the time, what we're talking about is law enforcement restraining someone for transport. But they probably have their best interests in mind, hopefully, as they're restraining them, because the alternative is to harm them into submission. But if you leave that person in handcuffs long enough, it's unfair to them. And left to their own devices, they'll find a way out. If you take a student and you restrain them for too long, it stifles their growth. And they start to ask why. and they start to figure some things out. And the more they figure things out and you don't support that as an instructor, the more likely you are to lose them. I don't know what the numbers are, but one of the things that I want to do with Whistlekick as we grow, as we, when we reach a point where we have money, real money, there are so many studies I want to do. And one of them would be on something like this: the real reasons people quit. I suspect one of the reasons in there, people may not even be able to articulate it, is that the instructor's growth path for that student does not make sense to them. They cannot see what success looks like to them.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they feel stifled, restrained. And we know, and this comes up in the MATIC courses, which I know you've been to, that if someone does not see their path to success, they will disconnect because people don't want to make the wrong choice. And telling them, trust me, give me 2 more years, you'll understand why, that doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Handcuffs.
Nice. Good job, Jeremy.
Handcuffs into a heart.
Oh. Awesome. Good job. Those are our words for today.
I liked those. Those were fun. All right. As I drink out of my coffee mug. Okay. Audience, thank you. If you have words for Andrew for the next word association, email him, andrew@whistlekick.com. You can also email Andrew if you have ideas for Thursday shows or guest suggestions. You can also, what else can they ask you? They can ask, they can just say hi. They can email you to say, is Jeremy as awesome and cool in real life as he is on this show? And he will say, no,
sometimes
he is not. Sometimes. I put on an act. This is all for show. I'm pretty much me all the time. At least I try to be. If you want to email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com, you can do so if you have questions around really anything that we do, whether it's the new program, Whistlekick Alliance, whether you missed a link or wanted to dig something deeper, or here's one I haven't offered in a while. If you're having a problem, we've done a number of episodes over the years where someone wrote in and they were having a difficult situation and we unpacked it as an episode. If you want to do that privately, we don't have to put your face up, and we can even come up with a way to make some modulation to your voice so nobody would know who it is. But if you're having an experience, I guarantee you others are having that experience. And if you'd like some advice, happy to offer it. I appreciate all of you, whether you watch, you listen, whether it's your first episode or you've watched or listened to all 800 and whatever this is. Do you know off the top of your head?
873.
This might be 873 or at least near that. We appreciate you. We're here to connect, educate, and entertain the traditional martial artists of the world, and that includes you. We believe that everyone would stand to benefit from 6 months of training and that the world would be a better place because of it. Help us get there. Until next time,
train
hard,
smile,
and
have a great day.
And have a great day. Woo! Virtual high five.